Webinar. Today we're going to be talking about from A to Z how to install luxury vinyl tile with floor heating. My name, Julia Billen. I'm the owner here at WarmlyYours. My lovely sidekick here is Scott. Scott, introduce yourself, my friend.
Hi, I'm Scott from WarmlyYours. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You always make it interesting, Scott. Today's exciting for a couple of reasons. One, it's the first time that we go live on Facebook. So I'm really happy that our over 30,000 fans get a chance to see this, and especially to see you, Scott. And the second reason this is exciting is because we're both remote. I'm working here from my home, and Scott, I believe you're in the North Pole. Is that correct?
I am. And we are getting a lot of echoes here, so I'm trying to work through that right now.
All right, so you're doing some magic for us behind the scenes. Well, thank you for that. Let me just share with you guys. We like this to be very interactive. We're in your homes. I assume most of you are remote right now, and we have an expert here. Scott's been with WarmlyYours. Seems like forever, Scott. Would you echo that?
Yeah, speaking of echoes, yes. I guess that no one else can hear these echoes.
No, I can't.
And you don't? Okay,
yeah.
I do. So I'll just pretend I'm talking overseas to you folks.
Yeah, it's those strange voices you usually hear in your head, Scott. So we're good, I think, right?
Yeah, the medicine was supposed to take care of that, but I don't know.
We do have off camera our sidekick, Olivia. So occasionally if we get questions here, through Crowdcast or Facebook, she's going to be just shouting them out to us. So if you hear another voice, Scott, it actually is someone.
Okay, good.
All right, well, let's pull up the presentation. We'll get started. Like I was saying, this is very interactive. Ask your questions. You can see right there. Scott, I think we might need to make that perfect. Gosh, you're reading my mind already. Mm-hmm. So there's that ask a question button. Use it, please. Get everything answered today. We're here 24/7, but this is the whole purpose of today's webinar. So let's move right along to our intro. We like to just give a general idea of what we're going to be talking about today. Scott, you want to take it away?
Sure. We'll be talking about floor heating, project examples, and installation processes.
All wrapped around a luxury vinyl tile installation. And one of the things I love about these long format webinars is we actually go into a real project. It's not just textbook. We go into a real project and we give clear examples of what you can do on site. The other great thing about today and these webinars is that we actually have Scott, as I was sharing. Not only is he a textbook expert, not only is he on the phone every day dealing with installation questions and sometimes troubles, but he's also done installs. So he's been on site. He's pretty much seen it all. Would you agree with that, Scott?
Absolutely.
All right.
Here to share anything that bad happens, so the same thing doesn't happen to people watching today.
All right, let's move on to now that we've got the outline. The reason we've actually have done this topic before, and the reason we do that is it's very popular. I think this is our most popular webinar. There is a lot of buzz, a lot of interest about luxury vinyl tile. For a variety of reasons. You love this product, Scott. Why do you love it so much?
Well, because it is very price friendly.
Okay.
And it's very easy to install.
And it looks beautiful. I have a luxury vinyl tile installed in one bedroom. And it really does look very similar to this. It almost looks like a wood flooring. So it's got an elevated look with an inexpensive price, definitely durable, great for high traffic areas, great for pets. And does it have any waterproofing?
Usually if it's put in together correctly, it's very water resistant. Mm-hmm. And it feels a little bit warmer than tile does. And it feels a little bit warmer than laminate does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, a lot of buzz around this type of flooring, luxury vinyl tile. And of course, people are going to be using this in rooms where they may want to combine it with heated floors. The reason that they might want to do that is they may have a room that is colder than usual over a garage, could be a basement. And we'll actually be talking about a basement project today. But it's a beautiful combination of luxury vinyl tile, inexpensive, with heated floors to just give it that next level of luxury to the masses. Anything else you want to share?
Well, the one thing is people kind of put this together with laminate, and this product and laminate are going to heat in two different ways.
All right, so we'll be talking more.
Products.
Those are going to be some good little tips you're going to be sharing with us along the way.
I'm going to try, but I am fighting the battle here with my ears. So
Okay.
If I step on what you're saying, I apologize.
No worries, no worries. We'll get that under control. All right, so we've talked about luxury vinyl tile. Let's take it to that heated system. So today we're going to be talking about there are a variety of ways that you can do floor heating. We're going to be talking about two main product lines. And the reason for that is the floor heating needs to be embedded. So it needs to be embedded in the floor. And we'll actually show what that means, but it's a very specific type of install. Most of you who have done tile work will be very familiar with embedded systems. So we'll be talking about how to do that, very detailed. We're also going to be telling you a little bit about, how it heats, the fact that, it uses watts per square foot, anywhere from 8 to 15 watts per square foot. And we'll share with you, how that's important and when you're going to need that kind of information. But the key here is we're pairing our temp zone floor heating products, 2 iterations. On the left, you'll see a roll product. That is a heating cable that is sewn or adhered by tape to a fiberglass mesh. And on the right, you see our temp zone cable product, and that is cable on a spoil. So how'd I do with explaining that, Scotty?
Pretty good. What people normally think about when they're heating this type of floor is that they want to use the product that has been historically used with laminate.
And now I am getting your echo, Scott.
Yeah, see, I'm fighting the battle here. Yeah. But the Environ product is specifically for a carpet in the U.S. and for laminate in the U.S. and Canada.
Okay.
So we're going to explain why this specific type of product needs a specific type of installation.
All righty. So basically what we're just trying to show you here is, and we're the experts, when you're doing your luxury vinyl tile application, you can count on us to walk you through the exact product for your application and to steer you away, as Scott is saying, from the Environ heating roll. I'm going to take over, Scott, and move on to, the big picture. We've talked about the fact that the final flooring surface, luxury vinyl tile, we know we're going to be installing under that a heating cable, but there is a whole sandwich that has to happen from the subfloor to that final flooring surface. So I'm going to start at the bottom. Actually, I'll start at the top. Let me change I'm a woman, I can change my mind. So at the top there, we have the luxury vinyl tile plank. And that is an embedded system, as we indicated. And that means it's going to be embedded in an adhesive called self-leveling cement. Most of you are familiar with that. But it basically is, it just means that once you install from the subfloor up, you're going to float in that self-leveling cement over top, and you'll see that next part of the sandwich over top the floor heating system. This here we're showing you the roll, but that could be the cable as well. And that in this particular application, let me introduce another product. The other thing you're going to see in that sandwich is something called CeraZorb. That's an underlayment. And the reason we're using CeraZorb is because it's over a concrete floor. And Scott is the champion of this because he takes a lot of tech support calls. And that is that anytime you have a concrete subfloor and in a basement, in a sunroom, it's very important that you isolate the floor heating from that concrete subfloor, because the concrete will actually draw the heat out and downward, and rather than it radiating up and out. So will you get a warm floor? Well, if you're in a warmer climate, yes. If you're in a colder climate, I like to say eventually. So we're showing that in the sandwich for this particular application because we are on a concrete subfloor. And that's
Julia, I had a couple of questions
that
pertain to this slide. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and talk about those, if that's okay.
Well, you're still getting that echo. So why don't I walk through the questions real quick?
Okay.
You want to give me the numbers you want to go over?
Well, this one was going to be addressed to Kristen A.
Okay.
Which is question number 4.
Can it be used with any luxury vinyl tile, and what other types of flooring? So the one thing that we like to talk about is with using, and let's go back to the cross section in general, with using this technique of self-leveling cement, kind of the middle of the sandwich there, you can basically use any flooring surface above it. So right now that second layer is self-leveling. Above that could be tile. It could be any type of wood or stone product. Could even be carpet in the US, not in Canada. So if you use self-leveling cement to embed the heating element, yes, you can use above self-leveling cement as long as it's a nice smooth surface, any flooring type. So, and then we'll talk about the different types of luxury vinyl tile a little bit later in the presentation. Are you okay if I skip over to that, Scott?
I have one more question about this slide, and that's question number 6 from Becky.
All right, let me read that out. Becky wants to know, how will this benefit me as a selections coordinator specifier, I guess? Specifically, I see. Will they cover the benefits of utilizing the product? Absolutely. I think how this could benefit you is this slide specifically understanding those different layers so that you can help your customers specify that right, the correct sandwich, if you will. So this, depending on the subfloor, and depending on that final flooring surface, which in this case is luxury vinyl tile, a lot of different things can happen. For one, you might be using, rather than self-leveling cement, we might suggest that you use thinset. So we would help you specifically to specify that or coordinate that with the selection process or your customer. And if we take it one level down, we're using Tempzone FlexRoll here, but depending on the application, that could change. That could be a cable product. That could be a custom product that we work with you for. And then the next layer is the CeraZorb. If you're in a warmer climate, if you're not on a concrete subfloor, that's going to change. The CeraZorb could potentially just be eliminated, or it could be replaced with another product like cork if we're doing more of a carpet install. So we definitely can help you with specifying exactly.
If anybody can hear.
Yeah. So Scott, can you hear that?
I heard part of it,
okay,
and part of it broke up.
Okay. So let's move forward in the presentation. I think the next step is making sure everybody understands. For us, the key is understanding that subfloor, that final flooring surface, and from there we can decide what happens in between. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers the question. All right, embedding versus floating floor heating. So earlier, Scott, you talked about the fact that a lot of people are confused between luxury vinyl tile and laminated. They might assume it's similar in terms of install. They might even assume it's similar in terms of what products you use, but you like to make a distinction between those.
Well, the thing about LVT is it's more pliable than laminate 9 times out of 10. And the laminate is more resilient. LVT over time can start bending and conforming to what's under it. And I think that's what this picture shows.
Okay. Let's do a reality check with Olivia. Olivia, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear both of you fine. And we have someone else watching on staff. They said that you're both good too.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So, Scott, talk me through this image that I'm looking at here.
Well, usually LVT has much more stringent requirements when it comes to flatness when you put it in. And because laminate is more resilient, it stays straight.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that ability to stay straight, laminate can be heated with our Environ product, which sits directly under it, because it can hide any imperfections caused by the wires in that particular product. Okay. So with LVT, it can either conform to that right away, or over 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or whatever years it is, you may actually start to see the cables in the top surface. You don't see the cables themselves. You just see the bends from it going over the cable.
Right. So that's, I guess what we're pointing out here is that's why all luxury vinyl tiles must be embedded. They cannot float, correct?
Yeah, you'll see people say, I've got SPC, or I've got this type, or I've got that type.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the flatness requirements for insulation and the requirement for embedded heat, those are the 2 reasons you go into this installation type that we're showing today.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So I think the clear takeaway here is always embedded, never floating, correct?
Correct.
All right. Excellent. And then the next thing that people are always asking, and I think we were going to talk about this with the question that we had earlier, which is, what do you look for when you're purchasing your luxury vinyl tile? And I know for you, Scott, one of the things that you prefer is no or minimal backing. And I believe the reason for that is that you want to make sure the R value is as small, as less as possible. And we usually say 1 or under. And the reason for that is we really don't want to trap the heat, or we don't want to make it or have it take longer than it should to warm the room and the objects in the room. We want to get the most efficient heat transfer. And when you have a high R value, that heat transfer can be compromised. Is that a good way of saying that?
It won't go through the covering.
Yeah.
It's like spending a whole bunch of money on heating the subfloor and then putting something over it that traps all the heat, doesn't let it up.
Yeah. So I think to answer the question, is this possible for all luxury vinyl tile flooring? Yes, as long as you contact the manufacturer, make sure that anything that's on the backing, I've seen foam, I've seen rubber backings. Make sure that the R value is at or less than 1. And then the other thing that you always want to check is warranty. And make sure that with embedded electric floor heating, that the warranty is not voided. If you're coupling with electric floor heating. What I like to think about is if the product has a warranty for hydronic radiant heating, then it should have also a warranty for electric floor heating. Scott, you love to talk about that. So why don't you share your thoughts on that?
Well, the idea here is you want to make sure is you want to let the heat get through the flooring. And the 2 main things you want to check with when you're buying this flooring, what's the maximum temperature allowed? And is it warranted with radiant heating?
Right. Embedded specifically is the key word.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And we had a question from, let me see, Leyland, which was question number 2.
Yeah. Do you
How
want me
does
to
this
read
heat
that?
compare with hydronic radiant and then uses a combi boiler system?
Okay.
Heat is heat, but electric is much easier to regulate.
Yes.
And also, when hot water enters a room, it's hotter where it enters a room than when it leaves. With electric, it's the same temperature at the beginning that is at the end.
Yeah.
And we're able to regulate that temperature within 1 degree,
Yes.
which they're not able to do with hot water. Hot water temperatures will overshoot and undershoot, and they just do this all day long. They go over the temperature and go under it because they take the average, and that average is sometimes not even controllable because they don't have a sensor in the floor.
Correct.
What we have is a sensor in the floor. We know exactly what the temperature of the floor is, and we can regulate it to that temperature.
Excellent. I love that. And so when you're looking for whether there's a warranty or not, again, make sure they understand that you're embedding this. It's not floating. Very similar, but better than hydronic heating. And then we're going to be talking more about temperature as well. But one of the things I like to share with you is when you're looking at luxury vinyl tile, again, we want you to talk to the manufacturer about what's the maximum temperature they want that luxury vinyl tile at. And that's usually again, as Scott was saying, that's with a sensor. We can actually make sure that the luxury vinyl tile stays at or lower than that temperature within a 1 degree delta. Is that correct, Scott?
Yes, and we've got a few questions here. This is, I kind of had a feeling this would be the good spot for a lot of the questions. And we have a few of them that have popped up.
Right.
So if I see, once again, I apologize for people that are just joining. I've got a bad connection. So I'm doing my best. Does this heated element, is it allowed to be installed over SPC floor or a WPC floor of LVT? This sounds like a military question to me. There's a bunch of
a bunch of acronyms.
A bunch of acronyms here. But I think this question is answered because this product has to be embedded in self-leveling.
Yeah, so it could
then
not go over it.
Then you have a flat self-leveled system.
Exactly.
And then you can probably put on top of there any type of flooring, as you said earlier, Julia, carpet, LVT, squares, planks, that sort of stuff. So I think we answered that question.
You feel good about that?
So thank you, Sarah. What thickness is required of the SLC for LVP? I understood this one. And that is 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch.
Yeah.
So 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch.
And I think that's true for a luxury vinyl tile, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So
we had another question that are all coming up right now. So that's great. Thank you for participation.
We do love that.
With the embedded system, the LVT is still a floating floor, correct? That depends on the installation requirements of that particular flooring.
That's true.
So some flooring may say, hey, we want this to be glued down. And some of this is purely floating. The good thing about this installation that we're showing, it lets you do either.
Right, you've got that smooth finish, and on that smooth finish of the self-leveling, you can then glue down, you can float over it with your luxury vinyl tile.
And we had another question that came in before, and that's from Victoria. And she says, what adhesive can be used for heated floor that won't be damaged? And that's a pretty easy question to answer. And thank you, Victoria, for asking that.
Yeah.
You have to keep in mind, we're going to be talking about temperature limits a little bit later. This flooring is only going to be allowed to get to a certain temperature. That's usually 82, 84, 85, 80, whatever that manufacturer specifies.
Right.
So if you think about that, she had a question about what would you use to glue it down if it requires glue? Will this heat damage the glue? Well, this heat won't damage the glue because it's only 80 degrees or 82 degrees. The temperature of the floor when it's being hit by the sunshine during the day can be easily 100, 120 degrees. This 80 degrees from radiant floor heating is not going to affect anything when it comes to that glue.
And I've done reality checks. I've looked at the glue that's being used for the particular job site. Either there's recommendations right there on the directions, or again, contact the manufacturer. But most glues used for flooring adhesion can withstand those temperatures and more. So.
And we had a question from John while we're on this particular slide. He had a question.
Sure.
Will the radiant heat affect the attached rubber or cork backing on the LVT?
Yeah.
Once again, we're talking about 84 degrees, 82, 85, whatever it is.
Yeah.
No.
So so the sun shining in at some points in the summer, will cause more heat than the radiant heating system. So absolutely not.
So those are all great questions, and they're all leading to our next slide.
And Scott, you did a good job there.
Well, thank you.
You feeling better with with the headset?
No, I'm still hearing myself 3 seconds later, but that's all right. I just do myself.
All right, we'll move on to the next one. And we really wanted to, with this next slide, let's flip to that. Excellent. We really wanted to hone in on that temperature limit that you just talked about, Scott. So the whole reason for this is to show you guys that there are controls that come with the floor heating, and that control allows you to do a lot of things. But one very important thing when it comes to luxury vinyl tile, laminate, and any type of wood flooring, frankly, is that it allows you to default the setting to laminate or to a custom setting so that the floor does not exceed that manufacturer limitation. And as you can see, the default there is 82 degrees. It says laminate, but it's the same for luxury vinyl tile. And you can even make that a custom degree as well. There are certain woods and laminates that will allow you to go up to 84 degrees. There are some that will want you to be right at 80. So know that number and know that we have a control that will allow you to accommodate it. Anything else you want to share with that, Scott?
Well, this is the only place where the worlds of laminate and LVT come together, and that's in the temperature limitation. And that's why it's so important to get this set correctly. Because if you set it correctly, you don't have to worry about warping. And that's one question that Mary P had. Yeah. Do you have to worry about warping? No, because we're able to control the temperature so tightly.
Right.
Now, one thing you might want to ask about the manufacturer of the flooring is to see if they have a rule about offsetting temperatures, where it's comfort during a portion of the day and colder when no one's on it. If sometimes they might have one and it's 3 degrees. Sometimes they may not have one.
Yeah. So are you talking about the fact that the laminate or the LVT or wood manufacturer in general, because I think this is true for all of these, that they may want you to do a slow ramp up and a slow ramp down, I guess that's the word, rather than quickly heating it up and then quickly turning it off. Is that what you're referring to there, Scott?
Yeah, it refers to the setback that these thermostats offer.
Okay.
So comfort temperatures when you're expected to be on it, and then economy when you're away to work.
Okay,
so they may limit that.
Okay. So what would be the question that they would ask the manufacturer specifically?
Setback is the word.
Okay.
Does this have a setback restriction?
Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you for sharing that, Scott. I didn't even know about that. So good stuff. So
now we get to go into the real world.
Yeah, the good stuff, right? We've talked about the control. We've talked about what to look for with your luxury vinyl tile. We've given you a general kind of sandwich overview of what all is included. We've talked about the floor heating. So let's take all of that great knowledge that you just passed along to everyone, Scott, and let's drill it into a real project. This is a basement project. Again, that's why we use the CeraZorb. We wanted to isolate the heating element from that subfloor with CeraZorb. What's the R factor for the CeraZorb, Scott? I know it's over 1. Is it over 2?
1.5.
1.5. We split it. So great, a great R factor. Really helps for the, to make the heating system more efficient. So faster warm up time, stays warmer. So that's why that CeraZorb is included in this project. So this is a bedroom office combo in a basement in Toronto, Canada. So it's cold. So they definitely, when they were redoing the basement, they definitely wanted to put in floor heat, definitely wanted to get that CeraZorb as well. Now, when we do projects, the first thing that we like to get from you, and the first thing you should get from your customer, is a drawing of the room. That's key. A lot of things happen from this plan. 1, it's used during install. 2, it's used just in pre-planning to talk about where exactly do you want to heat. The beautiful thing about radiant heating is you put it exactly where you want it. And then it's also a tool to understand, well, what might be some of the things in the room that we want to avoid. So this is the bedroom office combination, Scott. What would you like to point out on this smart plan?
Well, first of all, I don't want to lose the people who don't have basements, because as soon as they go, oh, they're talking about basements, that's not me.
Okay, yeah.
It really is, because if you are in a place that has a concrete slab construction, this pertains to you too.
Yeah, and we can talk about that through as well, Scott. Like if your subfloor is wood, you've got a bedroom on the second floor. We can talk about what might be the difference between this project that's on a concrete subfloor and a project that's on a wood subfloor. So maybe you can remind us as we're going through this, to give a few hints for both. Sound good?
Yeah, and what I can tell from this drawing too is that it's probably in a basement because there are no air vents shown. Okay. One other thing is we never heat, or no, I can't say never, but a lot of times we don't heat from edge to edge of the room.
Right.
Is we're putting this where people are going to be walking and standing.
Right.
Notice how it's pulled away from the walls.
I do see that.
No one ever stands right up against the wall. So if you're going for comfort heat, there's no need to heat that area. The most important thing is to keep the floor heated where your feet are going to hit it.
Right. And what I'd like to add, Olivia, do we have any new questions out there on Facebook or on Crowdcast?
She got kicked out, it looks like.
Okay, well, hopefully she'll join us back in. All right, so the one thing I like to talk about is what's really important for your plan is dimensions. Why is that important, Scott?
Because we need to know how much product can fit into that space. Okay. You can't buy this product and then cut it off to make it fit a space. So what we do is we take that space and we take our biggest product that will fit in there and we install it. Yeah, so the product is actually customized to your space. And that's the reason we like to get exact dimensions. We like to know if you have where you would like to put the control, the thermostat, and you'll see that indicated on this SmartPlan. It's a T with a circle. So we like to make sure that we know where that thermostat is, because ultimately, remember what we talked about earlier, that thermostat is controlling the temperature that that heating element will reach. It's also controlling when it turns on, when it turns off. So we like to know where that control is, because at the end of the heating element are return power leads. Those return leads are connected to the thermostat as well as a sensor, and we'll show you that later in the presentation. So exact dimensions, we want to know about vents.
Any heavy furniture, like a bookcase that has a base that could trap heat. We like to know about that. Remember, we only go in the footprint of the room. So I always suggest walk the room, decide exactly where you want to heat. And again, this is a fairly, wide open room. The most popular application for radiant heating is in a bathroom. So if this were a bathroom, we'd want to know things like, where is the vanity, shower, tub, toilet? We want to know about all of those things because, again, we're not going to go under them. We're just going to go in the footprint, the areas that you're walking in. So
none of these presentations would ever be complete without me mentioning the National Electric Code.
Yes, go for it.
That would tell us that you never install heating product like this under a permanent fixture. So if you know that there's a permanent bookcase, if you know that there's going to be something installed over the top of this that's never going to move, then you don't install the heat under it.
Yeah, that's good. Good stuff.
And a reminder,
yes.
we do have training sessions during the week specifically on how to do a smart plan, how to submit plans to get smart plans from us.
Yeah.
So there's lots of information already on our website that shows you how to get to this point.
Yeah. So that's the beginning of the project, guys. It all starts with a plan. You send us a drawing of the room, and then we send this back to you. And from there, the next thing that we really want to talk about is the electrical part of this system. This is important because you need to make sure that you have enough amps, watts available for this system. Most of the time, we like to recommend that this goes on its own breaker. You'll see the power requirements right there. So you see the wattage, you see the amps, and you also see the required breaker size. In this case, 115 amp. This is a 240 system that we did in the basement. And non-GFCI breaker. The reason we like to talk about the power requirements, many. One, make sure you have enough in your electrical box. Two, make sure that that breaker in the box is non-GFCI. The reason for that is UL requires, and maybe even the National Electric Code requires, that our thermostats have built-in GFCIs. The reason for that is for whatever reason, and it's very rare. If something happened with the heating element, something very heavy somehow got dropped and it punctured the floor and somehow punctured the heating element, the thermostat switches it off faster than I can bat my eye or eyes. I actually have two. We really like to spell that out for you because radiant electric floor heating is just a little bit different from your regular thermostat and from your typical requirements for energy in general. Anything else you want to share on this? The other thing that welcome back, Olivia. The other thing that we like to talk about is the operating costs. That's another misconception. Many people think that the operating costs on these are very high. Scotty, roll it out. How much is this going to cost per hour?
Let me see. 8 cents per hour.
Well done, Scott. Well done.
My friend is so small.
Is that too small for you? Oh, I'm sorry. I won't do that again.
I got it. No, I got it.
You got it?
I just have to make sure I turn the glasses in the right direction.
So 8 cents per hour, folks. It's really inexpensive to operate. This is another great tool to use either for yourself or your customers because, again, it's another block. A lot of people will be like, I'm not going to do that. It's going to be so much to operate. And you can see here, 8 cents per hour. Not only that, but you're only when you're using it. So if this is in your basement and you're using that basement, when guests arrive for the holidays, that could be used just a few times a year. So very energy efficient and only when you need it. So what else, Scott? What else would you like to say about the electrical requirements?
I have a question from Matthew, and it was about the last slide. So I'm going to go back one slide.
All righty.
and he says, why is the thermostat across the room from the end of the mat? Well, he's got pretty good eyes there. If we take a look at the plan, that's the end. But the cold lead, which is the power feed to the entire system, is over here where the triangle is. So the triangle is the start, and the T and the thermostat very close together.
Yeah.
There is no return line from this end.
It's because it's dual
So that's
conductor.
why it's at the other side of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If this
Twin
were a
conductor wire has one connection.
Yeah, single conductor, you might have more experience with those products. Great products, just 2 return power leads versus 1 return power lead. So I hope that answers your question. So again, have a plan for the heating element, areas you want to heat, areas you want to avoid. Know the electrical requirements. We supply this with every project. It's that important. And this is 240 volts. So again, another key indicator, you want to make sure that this gets connected to 240, not a 120. So, Scotty?
Question. Well, statement actually.
Yeah.
Some people will say, should I get 240 because it's more efficient than 120?
Right.
We get the question all the time.
I knew you were going to go there.
And 120 heats just the same as 240.
Yeah.
The thing about 240, you can take a big space and keep it on one controller.
Exactly.
But it takes 2 spaces in your breaker box.
Yeah.
If you do a smaller space, there's no need to take up 2 spaces in your breaker box.
Yeah.
Just do it in 120.
Yeah. And you have
the same.
And you have a wattage recommendation where you say, above this wattage, go 240, below, do 120. What is that off the top of your head, Scott?
It's about 120 square feet of coverage.
Okay.
Is on one thermostat.
Yeah. And this is just slightly over that. So that's probably why they went 240. So
because that's why we want to keep it under one control.
Yeah.
So we double the amperage. I mean, we have the amperage by going to 240.
And that's another thing, guys, that we can work with you. If you only have 120 available, we could have reduced that coverage. If you go back to the next, if you go up a slide, Scott, we would just reduce the coverage here and then get that down to the 120, and you would be able to put that in 120 volt easily. So, and that would be very easy for us to trim this room down. All right, moving on. Let's see what we're going to talk about next.
My favorite slide.
I know. Do you want to go for it?
This is stating how important it is to test your system.
Right.
The first thing you want to do when you get that box from us is look at it in all its majesty and go, this stuff looks awesome.
So this is the part. This is the part of the project where, okay, you've purchased it. It's arrived at your front door, correct? All right. Sorry, just wanted to set the stage. Go for it.
Yeah. So you're going to get that box. You're going to open it up. Yep. The first thing you're going to do is test it, because if your installation date is next week and something's happened to that product, you can get it replaced in time for your installation next week.
Right.
So it's very important to test it when you get it.
Nice.
And the only way to test it properly is with a digital Ohmmeter. You don't want one of those old-fashioned analog meters with the needles that go back and forth, because this should tell you something. Oh, no, you don't. You want to make sure that you use this digital Ohmmeter.
That's good. All right. And Scott, there are probably people that don't even know what analog means out there. So I think we're fairly safe.
We have a question from Brent, and that is, can the system be put on a relay so one thermostat can control 2 sections? The answer to that is yes.
Yes.
However, you don't want those 2 sections to be 2 different types of rooms. So the last thing you'd want to do is put a thermostat in a hallway, right, to control a small bathroom.
You definitely want to zone. You want to zone things properly, and we talk about that as we go through the application for you. And that's great, Scott. You have a hallway. and then that might lead into a bedroom, for example. And if you put the two of them on the same control and you heat them to the same temperature, trust me, your hallway is going to be very different than the larger bedroom. You may not be able to get a good compromise for either area. So we do recommend that if you know areas are different sizes or used for different purposes, that you put them on your own control. Do people combine them sometimes? They absolutely do. And yes, that can be done technically.
But the main thing to think about this is, let's say you have a room that's over 240 square feet.
Yeah.
Then if it's a 400 square foot room, not two different spaces that are two different sizes, just one big room, you can then use a thermostat and a relay, which is a power module, the enjoin. And then when the thermostat turns on, it'll turn on the power module at the same time.
Exactly.
And turn it off at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's a very good question, Brent. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Thank you, Brent. Now, for testing, we need this a digital Ohmmeter. That's used to test the roll right when you get it. Don't wait, as Scott says, the day before and find out for whatever reason it got dropped off the truck and somehow is damaged. You don't want to learn that the day of. You want to know that the moment you get it, because if there is an issue, we can get it corrected within 24 hours. We're fast. So test that system. And then the second device, it looks a little bit like an Easter egg. The second device is a circuit check. And this is actually checking the circuit to make sure that during install, that nothing happens. So the first thing you're going to do once you finalize that, yes, it's tested. And in that, we actually walk you through that testing process in our instructions, but you're looking for a particular ohm reading. This is an ohm meter. Scott, share with them how they can figure out what because it differs, I should say, based on the heating element and the size of it. How can they confirm that the ohm reading they're getting through this digital ohm meter is what it should be, and that, yes, all systems are go. Let's go to the next step and start working with the circuit check. Talk me through that.
There's a label on the end of the cold lead, and it tells you what the ohms are. There's usually one or two other that are on the heater itself, and it'll tell you the same thing. They're all three the same. So that's where you want to make sure that your reading is good within maybe 10 to 15% either way. Yeah. And that's what you're looking for.
Excellent. So you know what the reading is. It's on the label on the heating element. You confirm that it's within 10 to 15 degrees or percentage. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Percent of what the actual reading is. All systems go. If it's not, call us. We'll walk you through it. There are some changes that can happen as a result of temperature. So we'll walk you through it and make sure that the system is good to go. Once it's good to go and you're starting to install it per the SmartPlan, what you want to do is attach the return power lead lines, and you could use a more technical term, Scotty, to the circuit check. And that you leave on during the entire installation to make sure nothing happens. Nobody comes in with a hammer and accidentally drops it on the heating element. Anything else you want to say about that, Scott?
The only time you disconnect the circuit check is to test it with a meter.
Yeah.
And then once you're done with your tests and you're ready to put the flooring on top, you put the circuit check back on.
Yeah.
Because what it does is if somebody drops something, what it is an alarm. Yeah. So if you drop something, the alarm goes off. It tells you the thing you just did caused some damage to the wire.
There's a problem.
That's exactly
here.
Where you need to look.
Again, get on the line with us. Don't just thinset or put self-leveling cement over it, because then it becomes a much more serious issue. Any problems in the field, and by the way, 99.9% of all issues happen before it's actually put in, before it's embedded. So catch it then, because it's a lot easier for us to fix. And again, able to fix it in 24 hours.
All right, I've got a question from Nathan before we move on.
Sure.
And he's apologizing for asking this.
No,
And some of it's a
never.
repeat, some of it isn't. But no need to apologize. We're fine with that. Because it's all good stuff. It helps get it into our brain, right?
It really does, especially for you, Scott.
Yes, I need repetition. Installation instructions from most LVT manufacturers void warranty if the floor is less than 1/2 inch from the heating element. That's why we suggest 3/8 to 1/2 inch of self-leveling, because the wire is in the bottom of that layer. So by covering it, you're going to have 1/2 inch doing your separation. That's going to make you comply with your warranty. So that's a very good question.
Cool.
Do you recommend that thickness over the product? Yes. And we provide our regular warranty, which is the best in the business. So I think we answered that one pretty well.
You're doing a good job, Scott. I think you can keep your day job.
Thank goodness. Thank you so much. Well, let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, we've tested the systems. Everything's go. And now we're going to walk through the installation process. So everything starts with cleanliness, right?
Yes.
So let's go to the
Okay,
next
move on.
slide.
Okay, we're done. Goodbye, everybody.
So everything starts with that subfloor, and this is the actual subfloor for this project. So you know, this is again, this is concrete, Scott. But I think as we're talking through this, we should discuss a wood subfloor as well. So cleanliness is key. So how do we make sure it's clean?
Well, you follow the manufacturer's recommendation of the self-leveling.
Yep.
They're going to tell you how to clear any grease or dirt or
Oils.
dust.
Yes.
We know if you've been on a construction scene like this, dust is everywhere.
Everywhere, absolutely.
Dust coating these surfaces are going to keep the surfaces from bonding together.
Yeah. So
It's
you probably
very
want.
important that they get cleaned.
Yeah. So you probably want to sweep, vacuum, mop. You know, just
Degrease.
degrease, and make sure that it's as clean as possible. So clean you could even eat on it. So that's key. Now, if this were a wood subfloor, what else would we be looking for, Scott?
Well, it's very important to level the floor first,
Okay.
because self-leveling is going to find level.
Okay.
And if you have a floor that's shaped like a bowl, especially in older homes, second floor bathrooms that are 100 or 200 years old, those floors are going to sag in the middle.
Okay.
And we have gotten calls from people who say, the middle of my floor is cold, but where I walk in at the edge,
Around the edges,
nice and hot. On the other end of the room, nice and warm. In the center, nothing.
Yeah.
That's because there could be 2 or 3 inches of self-leveling covering the wire in the center, and then 1/2 inch along the edges.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference.
So clean, level. And that's true for concrete. That's true for wood subfloor. Clean, level. Anything else
And when
should
we
check
did
for?
your basement, when we heated your basement, there were some cracks or there was some stuff left over from construction.
Right. Huge crack.
We had to take
right
a
down
grinder.
The center.
Yep, and we had to grind those edges down, because remember the flatness requirements, they would be there anyway, but we want to make sure that the cable doesn't go over a ridge when you're installing it.
Okay. That's great. That's a good tip. Not everybody has those types of cracks, but I definitely had those cracks. Did we do self-leveling in my basement as well?
We did not, but we had to prepare it to get it flat. So they may run into that. Gotcha.
All right. So that's the subfloor. The next thing for this, again, for this particular project, we're putting down Sarasorb. It's on concrete. We've talked enough, I think, about why we're doing that. But the key is, how do you do it? So Scott, this is the first bit of that sandwich. How do you get the Sarasorb adhered to that concrete subfloor?
The best way is with latex modified thinset, with a 1/8 inch V-notch trowel, and you put that down. You set the CeraZorb out in brick pattern.
Yeah.
And then once you get it set, you pull it up, make sure you have adhesion, put it back down, and then put a roller over it, 30 to 50 pound roller.
Now I've
That's
seen
going to
this.
push it down into the thin set.
I've seen this brick pattern technique used with other types of insulation or underlayments. I've seen it with CeraZorb. I've seen it with cork. Why are you using a brick pattern?
Because then you don't introduce one long seam in the room that you might get a crack in. That's more important with tile because you don't want it to translate into the tile or into the grout line. With this type of flooring, you really don't have to worry about it that much. It's just a good habit to get into.
Okay. All right. So you're using thinset, latex modified. Does it have to be modified?
Yes.
Okay. So latex modified, and you're adhering it. Make sure, lift it up, make sure you get a good adhesion. What happens if you don't?
You may hear hollow spots. That's especially prevalent with tile. But anytime you have an air gap in there, you may get some play up and down in the entire system, and you may see some weakness in that spot.
I see. All right, let's do a pause. Olivia, do we have any new questions from Facebook? Anything we should be aware of?
Yeah, we actually have one regarding CeraZorb. They want to know if they need to apply the CeraZorb throughout the entire room or just underneath where the heating system will be.
That is a great question, Scott.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Because that gives you the same height. You're starting with 6 millimeters or 5 millimeters of this. And then that's going to be under the main part of the room. Then you have to worry about getting the other part of the room even. So if you look back on our plan, I'm going to go back there just real quickly, if you don't mind.
No, it's a great idea.
You definitely want CeraZorb in this entire space because then you're using the same amount of thin set. It makes your installation much, much easier. Because you may say, hey, I'm going to save a little money on the CeraZorb in these areas. Then you're going to be spending it on thin set or whatever along these edges to fill it. And you're really not accomplishing anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question, by the way. We need to think about that, saying that in the future presentations. I like that. All right, so we've put the CeraZorb down. Over that is the heating element, the next layer in the sandwich. This is a roll, could be a cable. Again, it could be a custom mat. We'd walk you through that. And you're following the floor plan. If you look at this big picture, Scott, you brought this up as we were rehearsing for this. You can actually see the floor plan was adhered to. So show that, right?
Yeah, if you can take a look right here, you can see where the wire's going in a different direction.
Yeah, and go back there.
Right here,
right there it is.
That wire is going in a different direction.
Yeah.
So we can tell they followed the plan.
Yeah. So let's go back. As they're using the SmartPlan to get the coverage in that room, they could be tacking it down from time to time. Explain why that's important, Scott.
It's very, very, very important. I said very 3 times.
You did. Is that the echo there, or?
It's really 9 times in my headphones. So what you need to do is you need to get this in place.
Yeah.
When we suggest the proper way of putting this product in is to not adhere it as you cut it and turn it, because you want to do your cuts and turns to make sure it fits first.
Yes.
Because if you're making all your connections and all your turns and that sort of stuff, and you find out at the end you either have too much or too little, it's much easier to fill that space or to take coverage from that space if the rest of it isn't attached to the floor.
Yeah, and
I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, and we can walk you. That does happen on occasion. Dimensions change. For example, the latest plan may not take the new dimensions into consideration. We can walk you through how to, hopefully, how to make adjustments in the field to make that custom roll work for you. The most important thing is some people think that they can, okay, I have too much. I'll just cut it off. And that's a problem, right, Scott? I see you shaking your head.
Very big problem.
Yeah. So talk about why that's a problem.
This
Scott.
is it's a constant wattage wire.
Yeah, you got it.
And if you remove wire,
Yeah.
you remove resistance. When you remove resistance, your amp goes up. So you don't want to get into that situation.
It could cause
There's a couple things
overheating.
on this. Excuse me?
That could cause overheating. So you really want
Yes,
to be,
yeah.
you want to not let that happen. You never cut the heating element as you're following the SmartPlan. Sorry to interrupt you, Scott. As you're following the SmartPlan, you're actually cutting the fiberglass mesh on this particular product. You're cutting in between those loops. And I think if you look closely, you can see the blue loops running through the fiberglass mesh.
Yes, it's very, very important also is once you have these measurements down, the product is where you want it. You need to make sure that the wire is face down.
Yeah.
The mesh facing up.
Yep.
Because we're going to be really attaching the mesh to the subfloor.
Yeah.
That's going to keep the wire from floating.
Yeah. And there are times when you do have to flip the heating element. So the cable may be side up. That's fine. It's just less protection. So if that does happen as part of the design, in some cases we can't get around it. We try not to. But if that does happen, or you have to make adjustments on the fly and you have to flip the cable up, fine. Just make sure you protect that heating element. Make sure you protect that cable. Did I say that well enough, Scott?
Yes. The one more point I had to make is that this product will float. If you're not very, very careful about attaching it to the subfloor, the product is all going to want to float to the top of the self-leveling.
Yeah, so you can use...
The last thing you want it to do is to float.
So you can use tape sporadically, hot glue I've seen done to kind of tack it down in places, correct?
Yes, everywhere.
Yeah.
Because it will float.
Okay. Now, and on it could be different on concrete versus a wood subfloor. A wood subfloor, it's easy to use a staple gun. Never staple over the heating elements, only the mesh. But for concrete, I assume you're always going to be taping or gluing. Is that accurate, Scott?
Right. Gluing is the best.
Okay. Good to know. Now, this is an important part of the project, guys. So let's pause for a moment, Scott. Let's check our questions that we got in ahead of time. Olivia, let us know if anyone on Crowdcast or Facebook has any questions on this part of the project. This is the part where you want to get it right for a variety of reasons. You want to get the coverage right. You want to make sure you install it correctly. You don't want to have any damage. If anything goes wrong at this point, it's all salvageable. So pick up the phone, call us on our 800 line if you have any questions before you put down any adhesive. All right. The next step then, Olivia, nothing?
No new questions on Facebook for right now.
All right, thanks. Anything on Crowdcast?
Not that I can see. I think Scott has addressed all the ones that have come in on the Ask a Question module at the bottom.
Perfect. Thank you, Olivia. All right, and then the final element. Talk about it. This is key, Scott. This is the good stuff.
This is what separates electric floor heat from hot water.
Hydronic.
Is the sensor being in the same level of the floor, so we know what the temperature is, and we can control it very finitely.
Exactly. Especially important.
One thing a lot of people like to do is they say, I want to run this out into the middle of the room. Let's get the sensor out there. You don't need to do that. The sensor needs to go right over by the thermostat, about 8 inches into the mesh, so it doesn't go over one of the heating wires.
Yeah, and that sensor is connected to the actual thermostat along with the return power leads. And we're going to show you a wiring diagram for that later. But that's the cable, the sensor wire, if you will, that gets attached to the back of the thermostat. That's a low voltage sensor. It's not line voltage. So usually line and low voltage are kept separate, and we show your electrician exactly how to do that, and most electricians are very familiar with that. So key things to remember is that sensor must go on the floor if it's a luxury vinyl tile install. Why is that? Because if you don't have the sensor, you can't control how hot that flooring gets. So that's key. Second thing is like Scott says, it doesn't have to go across the entire floor. 6 to 8 inches in, never, ever touching a heating element censored, just like you can see on that diagram, is key. Reason for that, again, is if it's touching a heating element, it's going to, because there is a temperature limitation, it's going to, or it's looking to seek a certain temperature. If there's no temperature limitation on the actual settings, you are actually asking it to come to a certain temperature. If the sensor head is hitting the wire, false reading. It's going to think it's hotter than what it is. And then, if it's not in there again, it's never going to get to the temperature. So
this leads me to a question we get all the time.
Yeah.
And that is, can I use my smart thermostat, like a Nest or something similar, to heat or control this floor in my house?
Yeah. I have quite a few Nests in my home. So
the thing is with Nest, it doesn't have an input for a floor sensor.
You're right.
So if you don't have an input for a floor sensor, there's no way for you to know what the temperature of the floor is.
Yeah.
There's going to be no way for you to comply with the warranty of that flooring manufacturer without being able to control the floor temperature.
Yeah, so for luxury vinyl tile and wood in general, we don't recommend a Nest control. We recommend a control that has a sensor for that very reason. I have Nests in my own home that I use with electric floor heating. I love it. I run that on ambient temperature, not on flooring temperature. Works great. But for luxury vinyl tile, you have to stick with that flooring sensor to make sure that the warranty is not voided. Sound good, Scott?
Yep.
And there are backup sensors available. A lot of people like to put in a second sensor just in case you don't attach them both at the same time. It's there just in case something happens to the original case. I can tell you these have an extremely low failure rate, but if you want to be conservative in your approach, put in a second sensor. We can supply that for you. All right, and then the next step is the sensor's in. We now can cover it with the adhesive. What do you recommend when people are using self-leveling cement and they're doing the pour over the heating element?
Well, the last thing you want to do is cover this product with self-leveling without knowing for sure that it's good. So that's where you're going to test it before you put the stuff over it.
The final
so
test.
What we've shown up to this point is the mesh being installed. Now that it's installed, the sensor's installed, we test them both with a meter. If they both test good, we put the circuit check back on the heating system.
Okay.
And then we start covering it with self-leveling.
So even when you're pouring the self-leveling cement, that circuit check is attached.
Yes. One thing we forgot to mention up to this point is before you put the heating product down, you want to put the primer down onto the Sarasorb using the primer that the self-leveling company suggests. You put it down then, because if you cover the Sarasorb with our product and you go to put the primer over it, it may not get all the way through. So that's one thing that we didn't think about until right now, and I'm glad I brought it up, is that you want to put that on before you put the heating system over it.
Now, how do they know what primer to use, Scott?
The bag of the self-leveling that they bought from the store will tell them which is required.
Okay. All right. Thanks for remembering that. Good stuff.
If you've never been to one of our webinars before, you know I don't normally talk like this. I'm waiting for my talking to stop after my lips stop.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job, Scott. All right, so we've got the self-leveling down. I know you like to talk about, and you might have already said it, you don't want to get caught in a corner. Right?
So that's why we're pouring the self-leveling over there, because the doorway's where we are looking at it from the picture.
Yeah.
So yeah, you start at the far end and work your way out.
Okay.
And when you're doing that, there's some great installation videos online that show how to install self-leveling, how to measure it, how to mix it, and then how to make sure it comes through in an easy manner. You may need one or two other people to help you.
Yeah. All right, so that's self-leveling cement, the adhesive. You've got then a nice, ideally flat, smooth surface. You're ready to install the luxury vinyl tile flooring, right? All systems go.
Right.
Do we still have the circuit check on now that we're installing the flooring?
I wouldn't have to, no, because it's already covered.
It's embedded,
part is
right?
done.
It's very safe now. It's in 3/8 inch of self-leveling, so it's safe. Looks like we might have a question that just came in.
Yes, the question is, can you walk directly on the matting to pour the self-leveling, or should you lay plywood to protect the mats? And you can walk over this cable without any problem.
Yeah.
You just don't want to walk on the splices, which is the black lump at the beginning and the black lump at the end of that heating product.
Yeah, you can walk. Yeah,
One thing I'd like to talk about on this particular. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and you're going to be monitoring the system as you go. So if you walk on it and I don't know, there's a nail in your, I don't know what could cause it to penetrate the heating element, but let's say it does, that circuit check is going to warn you. So that's why it's important to have that on during install.
If you're going to be walking on the mesh, which a lot of people do, you're going to want to wear tennis shoes that day instead of steel toe boots.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that you clean the bottom, make sure there's no rocks, stones, because those will get into the wire. So please be careful with that. But that's a great question.
It is a good one. All right, so we're installing the luxury vinyl tile. We don't need the circuit check at this point. What have you seen go wrong during install of luxury vinyl tile specifically?
The floating wire in the self-leveling, that's the number one thing. If people don't learn that ahead of time, they will make that mistake. But what you need to think here is LVT is much more forgiving than wood.
Okay.
That's why a lot of people choose to put it in. The manufacturer of this particular LVT may have a rule concerning what the moisture content of the self-leveling needs to be before it's covered. If there is that requirement, you just need to make sure that you keep the product off of it until it dries, and then you can start putting the LVT on. And that's one thing you have to check your manual. There
are devices that you can use, because this has nothing to do with electric floor heating. It's your atmosphere, the moisture in the atmosphere, and there are devices that you can use to check that to make sure that you're following luxury vinyl tile, and any wood flooring actually has a moisture requirement. So what device would you recommend that they use, Scott?
You don't need to really buy a very expensive one. The one we have, I think, was under $50. And it's got two probes. You stick it into the top of the self-leveling. It'll tell you what the moisture content is, and whether you pass or you don't. Then you just have to wait till the next day if it needs to dry out more. So
that's another good one, Scott. When you are determining your luxury vinyl tile flooring, understand what that moisture content should be. Again, not really related to radiant heating, but we want your wood flooring to be beautiful and last forever. So know that moisture content. Olivia, do we have any more questions?
Not that I see right now, no.
Okay, Scott, anything coming in from Crowdcast?
No, but I've got a point, and that is about turning the system on.
Okay.
People want to warm that floor up as soon as it's installed.
Yeah.
The thing is, you need to make sure you don't turn it on until the self-leveling has actually cured.
Right.
Not dried out and become firm, but cured.
Right. And those, again,
because if you apply too much heat to it, you can cause it to artificially age, artificially dry out, and it can damage the makeup of the self-leveling.
I've actually seen it crack and get flaky when people turn it on before curing. So it really can damage the adhesive. So follow the manufacturer's guidelines. It's right on the box or bag, I should say. So just follow that. And I know it's exciting. I know everybody wants to feel that heat, especially if you're doing it in the wintertime, but patience is a virtue. Next, we said we would talk about the wiring. I think this is about the ugliest thing I've ever seen, but it's a wiring diagram and it's got some really great information. So I allowed it. You want to walk us through that, Scott?
Well, the main thing it shows is that there are two conduits.
Key.
You never want that sensor to go in the same tube as the non-heating leads.
Yeah, we
You've
talked
got to
about
watch out for that.
You've got the sensor wire, you've got the return power leads. One's line voltage, the other's low voltage. They have to be separated. So that's why you see the two conduits. Not every jurisdiction requires low voltage and conduit. So just check with your local code, or you probably know what your local code is already. But a lot of times you can just let that low voltage wire hang, and then the line voltage can go in conduit.
Now, we had a question about a really large installation that may need power modules and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you have a bunch of mats or cables in the floor, if you have 5 or 6 connections, 5 or 6 mats and their connections coming to the wall, you're going to have a hard time getting all those wires up the wall to the back of the thermostat.
Absolutely.
So that's why I like this drawing so much, because you can picture a junction box down here.
Right.
Where all of those come in together.
Exactly.
And then one single wire is sent from this box down to this junction box.
Yeah.
And that's how you make your connection.
And
so it's really house wiring from here to there.
Yeah.
And this is where the coal leads would meet.
And again, that's only probably if you have maybe 3 mats or more. Would you say that's about right, Scott?
Correct.
Yeah. So 3 or more, do a junction box. If not, just directly up to the box. That is a single gang box. So business as usual. And we actually have electrical rough-in kits that we provide with the heating element to make it really easy for you. So
one of the secrets to putting a junction box in is to make sure it's right on the wall plate, which is right down here. And that way, if you set it up just right, you can get right at it just by taking the trim off. So what you're doing is you have the box there, and you put the wall trim over it. If you ever need to get over
it's accessible
into that box, you just pull the trim off, and there all your connections are.
That's key. I like that. That's a great tip. And this is one part of the project where we always say, get an electrician. Some jurisdictions require it, others don't, but just play it safe, especially if you're dealing with this particular application. It's 240 volts. That could be a little bit of a shock.
Exactly.
All right. And then in that box goes the thermostat. We showed you a photo of that earlier, but we wanted to show you again. There are a variety of controls that we provide. They all have GFCI, as we talked about earlier. They all work with a floor sensor. They do have different functions. We have everything from something that's simple where you just set it and forget it, out to Wi-Fi, touch screens. So depending on you and what you like in terms of features, we can accommodate all of that. Is there one particular control that you like to use for luxury vinyl tile, or all of these are fine, Scott?
All of these are great. I can't get over stressing enough that people use the touchscreen units. They may think, oh, I'll save a little bit of money, like maybe I'll choose the Enhance and save $30. Believe me, the touchscreen units are so much easier to program because they're simple. You press what you want to happen instead of going up and down, okay, up, down, okay, like the Enhance.
Right.
If that's something that you're looking for, easy to program, that's something you want to do with the touch. And you can get the Wi-Fi version or the non-Wi-Fi version, but they're both great, easy to use products. Now, if you just want a temperature, like if you say your LVT manufacturer says you need to set it for one temperature and then leave it there forever until you ramp it down at the end of the system, then that's where you choose the Entrust. The Entrust is great because you set it and forget it. So at the beginning of the heating system, I just lost my... Did we lose our presentation?
Yep, you lost the presentation. You can just pull it up. But I think what you were talking about is the fact that with the Enhance, you can just set it or forget it. You put it at that temperature mark that the manufacturer recommends, 80 degrees, and you don't touch it again. You might turn it off at the end of the season, turn it back on at the beginning of the season, but it really is set it and forget it. So that's a great choice if you're never going to play with temperature. So.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are thinking about doing a wood floor, just throwing that out there, if you're thinking about doing a wood floor, this is usually the best control, because that's what most flooring, wood flooring recommends. No setback temperatures, a constant temperature that remains the same. This is your unit for that.
Nice. So I think that's A to Z. I mean, we started out with the luxury vinyl tile. We went into the floor heating. We talked about the planning process. We talked about the install process, the wiring it up with the thermostat and the sensor. That's the whole thing, A to Z. The last two things that we want to do is, one, we want to do a final reveal. And then after that, we're going to talk about how much does this thing really cost. So you're going to see the actual product with the square footage and actual cost as well. So there's the final reveal. It turned out beautifully. Luxury vinyl tile, bedroom with a built-in office. So beautiful, as you can see. Anybody would love to have a basement that beautiful. And then affordable. If we take a look at the next slide, we like to leave you with this, because it's another misconception is that, oh my goodness, this is going to be terribly expensive. When you look at the overall project, adding electric floor heating is minimal. Here, the bottom line for this product, and by the way, this included the Sarasorb as well, which in some cases you would not need, some climates you would not need. But the total cost is a little over $2,000. So very affordable, very much needed in the basement, which tend to be cold and damp, and affordable. What else would you like to add there, Scott?
Well, that's the most important thing we talk about in some of our other webinars about if this is in a basement, a situation like this, usually the air vents are overhead and it's blowing hot air down about 2/3 of the way. And then it just, as it cools off, it goes right back up to the ceiling. This actually gives you, when you get out of bed in the morning and you put your feet down on it, your feet are actually going to be warm as soon as they hit the floor. A lot of people that I speak to on the phone, if they had a house like this and they move to a new place, the first thing they do after they get moved in is they call us. Yeah, because they want that back. They want that. If their new house doesn't have it, they go, I can't live without this stuff. I wake up and my feet are freezing.
Right. So perfect for a basement with that warm floor, the Sarasorb, all-in cost, $2,200. I think we have a question here on Crowdcast. So let's answer that question, Scott. You want to shout it out?
Yeah, I was just about ready to do that. I was waiting for this slide. So let's go ahead and open this up. How many square feet can 120 volt and 240 volt cover per breaker? That's great. The thermostats can handle up to 15 amps. So at 15 watts per square foot, which is the product that we used for this project, you can do about 120 square feet of that with one control. That will be right at 15 amps, and you will need a 20 amp circuit breaker for that.
At 120 volt.
At 120 volt. As your amp requirements drop, you may not need a 20 amp breaker. You may be able to use a 15 amp breaker, but remember, you can only use 80% of that rating. So if you have a 20 amp breaker, that means you can really only be switching 16. Yeah. So you need to keep that in mind. So 240 volt can cover about 240 square feet on that same 20 amp breaker.
Right.
With a 15 amp control.
Exactly. And that's a great question. We do size the breakers for you. We do walk you through that process, but that is a good general tip. So thanks for asking.
Great question, Nathan.
Yeah. Olivia, anything on Facebook?
No new questions yet.
Yeah. All right. And all right. Well, you have the expert. If something happens along the way, just shout it out and let us know. We'll make it happen. We do this every month. Scott and I do this every month, the second Thursday of the month at 1 p.m. So please, join us for our next webinar. We just brought on a new line of LED mirrors that I love. I love them because they're made in North America. I love them because you can kind of customize them. They're not just a one-size-fits-all kind of collection. So join us for our next webinar if you'd like to learn more about our new LED collection. So that's coming up May 14th, and it's always 1 p.m. Central Time. We do this every day, as Scott talked about earlier, we do live Q&As every day. The reason for that is we want to give everybody an opportunity to join us one-on-one and just ask the questions that you have for your specific project. So we recommend that those live Q&A sessions, those events are on our website. We recommend that you just come on our website, find out when the next live Q&A is. It doesn't even have to actually be about the subject that we're advertising. It could be about anything that you have questions on. Join one of those live Q&As. You'll be talking with an expert. Scott does them. My sales manager does them. I have another tech support person that does them. Everyone very knowledgeable can answer your questions. So join us for those live Q&As. And then we also like to just let you know what sales are going on. So right now we have 20% off our Lava Radiant panels. These were best of KBIS. This was a best of KBIS winner. So we recommend that you check out those lava panels. It's radiant heating, but it's actually like a panel that you just put on your wall, heats up, kind of like a fireplace, but in a panel format that you can just attach to your wall. It's really great for adding heat in those hard to heat rooms. So,
especially people that had just done their floors and they go, oh no, I could have had floor heat in here.
Right.
Best way to add this heat is to use one of these radiant panels because they act in the same way. They actually heat you up, and then the room gets warm too. They're great.
It is radiant. And then again, we want to hear back from you. This is interactive. We started with that message. So round it up with that message, which is we want to hear your feedback. We want to know what you want to learn about. So if there are topics that you're interested in, let us know. We actually listen and we will do your topic. So you better attend. Right, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely.
And always rate Scott a 10. Okay, that's just a given. Scott gets a 10.
Otherwise, it gets real ugly in here, believe me. Hey, I quit echoing right at the very end. I've got a great connection now. Let's keep going. We've got another 2 hours to do this.
Woo! All right, so contact us anytime. The 800 number's there. I put my email there purposefully. I want to hear from you. I want to, connect and walk you through your applications. So feel free to email me personally or info@WarmlyYours. Scott gets a lot of those emails as well. Check our website out. Scott, you'd like to talk about the fact that on our website, we have a lot of great videos. We have under the Explore area, we have a lot of tools that you can use to look at floor plan galleries, to look at other people's projects, project showcases. So there's a lot of great information that you can use just on our website to get a good feel for what others are doing like you. There's even a page for luxury vinyl tile applications that you can go to. So we break it down by flooring, we break it down by room, and of course by product line. So great
we did a
resource.
great video. Yeah, we did a great video on LVT in a second story room with a wood subfloor. So if you say, hey, I wonder how they do that, there is a video for that online too. You can check that out.
Yeah, and if you can't find that video, just give us a shout. So I think that's it. Unless there are any other questions, check out Crowdcast real quick because they got you here, Scott. We want to make sure that you can answer all their questions. But if no new questions, anything?
I think that's it.
That's it? All right, Scotty. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And until next time.
Stay warm and
be radiant. Take care, guys.
See you later.